Alrighty, everybody, we are back today, and today we're going to be talking about the first trip that I took out of state after I became an adult. So, this trip is one that didn't have any parental supervision or anybody around. It was just planned by me, your host, Dank Talks. So, my buddy and I, we were 19 years old, and we decided that we wanted to go down to Florida for Easter weekend, and it was April 20th during that time as well, so we were double stoked for the event. And we sat there and we planned this out at his house, and it took us a couple hours to kind of figure out how much money we would need to save, work out a route, and figure out the driving situation, because we weren't going to fly, we were going to drive. We decided we would both need about $450. We were going to stay with his grandparents during that time to say hi to them at Easter, and because they lived really close to the beach. They lived in Sebastian, Florida. So it was kind of like an old person community, but, we were stoked about it nonetheless. That meant less people our age there to kind of get in the way of our fun. So, about a week before, my car was decided we were going to drive in my car, which was a Oldsmobile Bravada 2002 all-wheel drive, the Cadillac of SUVs, and we were going to take that down because it had enough room for all of our stuff, and my buddy's car just wouldn't make it. Although, to be fair, my car wasn't likely to make the trip either. When I told my father about this, he decided that, your car definitely isn't going to make it. We need to be smart about this. And he decided that I could use his second car, which was a 2006 Honda Civic with a manual transmission in it. I had never drove a manual car before, and I barely even knew the difference between an automatic or manual car before this. So I obviously had to learn. This car was going to be my little brother's when he turned 15 and 16 and onwards, so that he could have something to drive, get him to school or whatever. But he was a little bit shy on the pedal, and it took him a while to get into it. So pretty much the day before I had to leave to go to Florida, I needed to learn how to drive a manual car. So my stepmom was like, hey, Dank, your little brother, come with me. We're gonna go and learn how to drive this. And we spend about 30 minutes in the car with my little brother. He's kind of putting around and getting it, and we're just in a parking lot for a park that was right next to the house. And it was cool and all. And eventually she was like, all right, Dank, it's your turn to try this out and see how you do. And so I get in this car, which I have no idea about, and she's like trying to explain the clutch and the shifter and how all of it kind of works together and how to get the car to move. She's like, all right, go ahead and put it into first, Dank, and take it around the parking lot. And I do, nice and easy, no stalling there. And she's like, all right, go ahead and take it up to second gear and see if you can keep going with that. And so I go and I shift it real nice and smooth into second gear. And she's kind of looking at me like with her jaw just open because I just got in this car and started to drive it. And then she's like, okay, go ahead and take it out onto the main road. I'm like, all right, easy enough. I take it out onto the main road, and I'm just driving this car like I was meant to drive a manual car. And she is sitting there completely blown away, and she says to me, I've never met anybody that kind of just got into it and picked it up like that, and so I kind of had an ego bump from that. Anyways, the next day, I'm like, all right, we're ready to go, so I go ahead and I get the Honda all loaded up, and I drive over to my friend's house and pick him up, and he didn't know how to drive a manual car. Originally, we were going to be taking turns driving because it was about an 8.5, 9-hour drive down. But since we were no longer taking an automatic and he didn't know how to drive, that left me with having to drive the whole 8.5, 9 hours to get down to our location. And so we are on the highway and we get into some Atlanta traffic, which people from Atlanta or that have drove through it know that Atlanta traffic is quite ridiculous. People will run you off the road. They do not use any of the lanes correctly, and it's quite scary driving in Atlanta, to be honest. But we're sitting there and we're stuck in start and stop traffic, and it's just 1 2 1 2 for me on the clutch. Well, he starts getting fidgety, and I ask him, I'm like, hey man, you alright? What's going on? And he's like, yeah man, I'm good. I just dropped 2 tabs of acid. And I kind of look over at him like, what dude? Are you kidding me? He's like, no, I did. I'm just starting to come up. And so I'm a little bit freaked out because I'm like, oh my god, this kid's gonna be losing his brain in the car with me for another 8 hours as I drive this car down to Florida. And then we're gonna have to get there, and he's gonna have to deal with his grandparents, and I'm gonna have to help him with this. So I was kind of like, damn it, this is gonna be a rough ride. But I didn't let that get to me, and we kept going. And we got out of the Atlanta traffic and started to drive, and then it hits him, and he starts laughing uncontrollably and just going on and on about just crazy things, the clouds, sky, music that we're listening to, this, that, and the next thing. And eventually, at some point, he decides that he's going to work on a project for school in the car with me, and so this kid is getting on FaceTime and talking to all of his partners with the project, just absolutely tripping balls. It was actually quite funny to look back and think about it. And he's sitting there and drawing all these things up, and he's trying to show me, and I'm like, dude, I can't look. I gotta drive the car. But it's all good. We pull into his grandparents' house about 7 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock at night. And he was all right by that point. And so we kind of get settled in or whatever. And they lived in this sort of old person community. Like, I don't think there was a person under the age of maybe 55 living there. And so we knew we had to be low key, but we brought a ton of good green stuff with us. And so we would go on walks and walk around and have a toke and talk about this, that, and the next thing. And then on our way up, we went. And so for 3 days we were down there, and we went to the beach a bunch, which was super cool, but we never got in the water because where we were, the waves were just absolutely ridiculous. The waves were coming in as tall as we were, and the water was just super murky, and we decided it was better probably not to swim because there might be a riptide or whatever. And so we mostly just sat on the beach, and we cracked open a couple cold ones, smoked some big cigars, and just did our thing. And it was a really, really good trip. We didn't have any money issues. We did a lot of sightseeing around the area, did some driving here and there. And on that Easter, my buddy didn't know how to cook steaks, and his grandparents were quite old, but they bought us these really nice T-bone steaks. And so they asked me to cook it up because I'm a chef, and that's kind of what I do. And so I go and I cook up these nice T-bone steaks for us, and we're having mashed potatoes and asparagus and corn and all these really good foods. And altogether, it was a super, super solid trip. I had a good time, my buddy had a good time, and his grandparents were super happy because they got to see him. So, day that we're about to start heading out, I'm going through my emails, and I check and I see that I have been accepted into the college that I was applying for at the time. And I was super stoked. And I decided that, since we were going home that day, I was going to wait until I got home to talk to my parents about it and tell them and give them the good news. So we get in the car, and at this point I felt very confident in my ability to drive this manual car. And so what I start doing is I am going 95 and a 70 on the highway, all the way down. And we get to bum nut middle of nowhere in Georgia, and my buddy says, Connor, look, there's a cop car behind us. And I'm like, oh shit. So I let off the gas and start slowing down. and I get into another lane so that he could pass, because if he wanted to pass, and then he flips his lights on and he's going to pull me over, and I'm like, damn. And I'm kind of freaking out because at this point, we hadn't exhausted all of our green resources, and we were carrying quite a large amount in the car with us. And 95 and a 70, 25 miles over, is a super speeder, which I could have gotten sent to jail. But the cop comes out and he's like, "You guys know that you were doing 95 and a 70? "Yes, officer. And I just told him, I was like, "Look, I just got accepted into college, very excited to get home and tell my parents all about it. Wasn't trying to be dangerous or anything." And he's like, "All right." He goes and he writes me a ticket, a very big ticket, and it kind of puts me in a bad mood. And I'm like, well, damn it. But that's all right. We get home, we drive the rest of the way without a hitch, and it's all good. All good. We get there, I tell my parents, I'm like, "Hey, I got accepted into college, and I also got a super speeder." And they're like, "Yay," but at the same time, they're like, "You idiot." And so that's how the trip went. In terms of the super speeder, what happened next was they didn't give me a court date on my ticket, so I had to call them and ask for one. Otherwise, I would have just had to pay it, and at that point, that would have been 4 points on my license. I was under the age of 21, so I would have gotten my license revoked for about 6 months. And I was living on my own at that point, and I was like, I cannot go without my license for 6 months. So I was like, it doesn't matter what I got to do, I'm going to fight this. And so I go and I tell them I want a court date, and they're like, "All right, we'll send you a court date." And a couple weeks go by, I have no response. I'm waiting for the mail to come in. And then I get a letter that says, "Hey, you missed your day in court. You have X amount of days to report to the police station," or this, that, and the other thing, "or else there will be a warrant out for your arrest." And I'm sitting here like, whoa, hold on. I requested a court date, I never got one, and now you guys are trying to arrest me? What's going on? So I go and I contact the courts, and I explain to them, I'm like, "Look, I never got the court date sent to the house. I was like, what can we do about this?" And they essentially just give me a plea deal. They're like, "Look, you hit the plea deal, we're going to charge you an ass load of money, make you do 20 hours of community service, but this is not, we're going to take this entire super speeder away. It's not going to show up on your insurance, it's not going to show up on your record, and you will not be having any points taken for it." And I figure at this point they just wanted to get me done and out the door because I was just clogging up the system for so long. So I got to keep my license and just do 20 hours of community service and pay a buttload of money. Not a bad trade. So I go ahead and I take the plea deal and I do my community service at a park, and it's a relatively easy time. But that is the story of how I took my first trip on my own as an adult with my buddy, and it was really good. And what I gotta say to you guys is that if you want to go anywhere, please do. Go on your trips, go and have fun, especially while you're young. Get those experiences now so that when you're older and such, you're not too worried about it, and it's not a super crazy situation for you. And you're going to learn a lot too, and you're going to come across a lot of experiences and come into a lot of road bumps like I did. But at the same time, it'll definitely be worth it. It'll be rewarding, and it's going to boost your self-esteem a lot. You're going to be very happy with yourself afterwards. So I want to say thank you all so much for coming out and watching this Dank Talks with me. This is episode 4. There will be another one dropping soon, and if you guys like this, go ahead and leave a like and a comment, share it with your friends. I greatly appreciate it, and you all have a great rest of your day. Have a good one.